Welcome to Off Panel.
Yo everybody, welcome to Off Panel. I'm your host, David Harper, and this week's guest is a staff writer for The Ringer and the host of the video game podcast Achievement Oriented. It's Jason Concepcion. Thanks for coming on, Jason.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So, the name of the game for today's podcast is comic book movies. It's a big weekend as it's the official weekend, or it's the official open to the summer movie season, and with it, we have our first of 3 Marvel Cinematic Universe entries of 2018, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. For all listeners, we're gonna have a ton of spoilers here, so if you haven't seen it, bail now. Anyways, Jason, you've seen it, I've seen it. Let's start with basic place. What's your take?
Well, I think I liked it. I think this one feels like it's more for the comic book people than even the first one.
Yeah.
Just because there's so much, it's not specifically the Easter eggs, but there's so much relationship building work in this one. Like I was shocked at the amount of relationship building scenes that were written into. Like that was really the theme of this movie is this team is their family. Mm-hmm. You know, team as family. It's almost like, you know, someone said, hey, can we do Fast and the Furious in space? So in that sense, like I also give them props for the big bad Ego, played by Kurt Russell, Ego the Living Planet, which I never thought I'd see on screen.
It was amazing.
Yeah, it was amazing. I also, I give them props for the way they used him in that framework of that kind of like family building framework. But it was almost like the big bad was kind of like a tertiary concern. He wasn't really, I guess you could say that for most of these movies, but this for Guardians 2 especially so. Like by the time you get to the final fight, you're like, whatever. I don't really care about the final fight.
No, I think you're exactly right because it all just kind of feels second. It's like Ego as a villain is actually there really just to kind of bolster or like make, you know, Peter understand his relationship with Yondu, to like contextualize it and like make everyone realize their relationships with each other. And it's kind of funny because Kurt Russell was actually great as Ego, and I love like he's got some pretty great swagger to it. And when we actually got to the point where it pans out and Kraglin is out in space and you actually see Kurt Russell's big ass beard on Ego the Living Planet, it's pretty fucking awesome. But it was kind of weird seeing like the villain as even more so than the other ones, like a completely secondary item to everything else that's going on.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he was there to do 2 primary things, which was 1, fill in Peter's backstory, which he did very well. Actually 3 things. 1, fill in the backstory. 2, act as the big bad. And 3, act as a contextualizing device that creates some empathy for Yondu, which may or may not have existed before. Yondu is as the real dad, you know, or the, you know, philosophically the real dad. And also to kind of hammer home this point of these are outcasts, you know, the people that should care about them, whether it be Thanos or Ego or the scientists that built Rocket, don't care about them as much as the people in the ship with them. You know, that's the team is the family. That's it. And you know, it did that as a like a summer blockbuster movie. Yeah, you know, it was all right.
It was interesting because like my entire audience was just raving about it. They were all just talking about how awesome it was, and I was actually kind of surprised because the Guardians movies weirdly don't really feel like Marvel movies in some ways. Right. Like I actually wrote down Fast and Furious 2. There was 2 things that remind me of, one in a good way, one in a bad way. Fast and Furious because it's like Guardians works because it's not because it's a Marvel movie. It actually works because you care so much about these characters, and that's all they're trying to do. But in the bad way, it reminded me of Suicide Squad. And last time we talked about it, it's, you know, Suicide Squad really heavily went for that family angle, but it didn't work. And Guardians is kind of more on the Fast and the Furious side of it than the Suicide Squad. It's got that vibe that they're going for. It just works way better. But it's kind of interesting. Do you feel like it feels kind of disconnected from the Marvel Universe in a major way? Because this one really didn't have any ties besides basically just Stan Lee.
Yeah, I did, but then again, like that's kind of the strength of Marvel Cosmic in general
Yeah.
as a publication genre within the Marvel universe. I've always thought that that's why cosmic crossovers are so good generally. If you look on balance at the last whatever 15 years of Marvel crossover events, I think you'd have to say that Armageddon and War of Kings and the cosmic stuff is overrepresented. Would you disagree?
No. I mean, the funny thing is like I could hand my wife like I don't know. Let me think of an event I actually like House of M. I like House of M generally speaking.
Yes.
I could hand my wife that and she'd have no fucking idea what's going on, even though it is a separate universe. But it's all built off all the stuff that happens in Astonishing X-Men, all this stuff that happens in Avengers Disassembled. She'd have to read a Wikipedia page first.
Right.
I could
Exactly.
hand her Annihilation and she could read that and understand it.
Right. Yeah, you read that. Yeah, because it's all. First of all, you're reintroducing characters that kind of haven't been in use since whatever. Like the '90s Guardians weren't even really Guardian. So it's like, it is a fresh start, and also, you can just blow up whole worlds out there.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like,
that's one of like the weirdly underrated parts about what Marvel's doing. They're straight up killing so many characters, and I think
oh my god,
it's really, you look at their villains. Like, who have they killed? They killed Ego the fucking Living Planet, which I never expected to exist.
Whole planet is out.
Red Skull is kind of gone. I mean, he might be gone. He kind of got like, I don't know, dissolved or whatever. Arnim Zola's gone. Like Hydra is kind of gone. Baron Strucker gone. Like they're just killing all, or I think Baron Strucker is gone. They're killing all these like major villains, and it's like the only one who kind of sticks around is Loki. But I find it kind of funny. It is like kind of the opposite of the comics in that regard, because they straight up kill people. And they're just like, whatever, we got more. They're like red shirt villains.
Red shirt whole planets.
Exactly.
I mean, it's like in the Dark Phoenix saga, what's the first thing what's the first indication that Jean Grey has gone too far? She flies out to space and kills like a fucking like a star system.
Right.
So like they're more freed from constraints. So yes, it's disconnected, and I think that's part of what's really enjoyable to me about Guardians. And like I said, like part of the reason why I feel like this is more for the comic book fans than usual is the Easter eggs that were there. There's no way what the fuck Adam Warlock is. Like, there's no way.
I love that. Like, I think almost every Easter egg that shows up at the end in like the end credit sequences, besides hilariously enough Howard the Duck in the first one. I always walk out the theater explaining to my wife, I'm like, okay, so that big purple guy is this guy named Thanos. He's kind of a big deal. He's got like a power set that basically means that he can't be stopped. He'll probably be a big deal later on. And she's like, oh, okay. And then she'll start reading Wikipedia page and she's like, it's way more complicated than you made it seem.
Yes, it's really it's much more complicated.
But I wanted to actually ask about the in credit sequences. Do you think there were too many?
No, I was fine with it. Whatever. They spaced it out pretty well. Where it ends, with basically the death of a planet and spoilers.
Yeah.
And like a kind of like a meant to be stirring funeral scene. There was just a lot of loose ends that I thought they tied up well. Mm-hmm. I didn't think it was, but that's just me. I like I'm a big stingers guy. I like the stingers.
Yeah, me too. I wasn't sure, but just because I knew that there was 5, and when I heard that, I was like, that kind of seems excessive. But the combination of the fact that they spaced them out well, and they also, they kind of tie up a lot of the loose ends. It ends in a really weird place. Like, it ends with like a close up of Rocket's face with him like shedding a tear, and I was like, that's kind of a surprising place to end it. So it makes sense that they would kind of tie up like some of the stuff with, I don't know, the Sovereign, the Gold People.
Yeah, the Sovereigns. I was trying to figure out what they could be an amalgam for.
They're the Universal Church of Truth, I think.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, from the Guardians run. So, like, basically, like, they're the ones who were bringing on Adam Warlock's other side, and like the main girl who was, I don't even remember what her real name is.
So I think she is the Sovereign. Yeah, right.
Yeah, she's the sister of Adam Warlock technically. Like, I think she's like basically a clone of Adam Warlock. Man, I think I hadn't thought of it, but it really does get deep into like the comic fandom stuff, and it's amazing that it's like totally acceptable to the normal people. Because I was like, all these people are getting hyped. I'm like, if I told you this stuff without you seeing it in a movie, you'd think it was so nerdy. It would be like you couldn't even comprehend it.
Like that's the thing when they showed the Adam Warlock cocoon, I was like, there's two people, like someone clapped, yeah. I was like, there's maybe plus minus 5 people in here who understand what that is, and then of those 5, like Adam Warlock has some complicated lore. Like even of those, I would not say that I'm an overly well-versed Adam Warlock person.
I don't think anyone is. Like seriously, is hit like I think Jim Starlin's like I don't even get the guy.
Right, he's the only guy. Like I would put Adam Warlock up there with kind of like the high evolutionary of like dudes who do stuff that are very powerful, but you're like, what does I recognize the name and the costume a little bit, but I have if you name 2 things that this guy has done, I'm not sure. Except for like be involved with Bova, the cow lady.
You know Marvel's going full heat check if they bring out Bova.
Oh my god, dude. If they do that, if they are like, oh, so here's the explanation for Scarlet Witch.
Her mom was a cow.
Right. I mean, that is just like Kevin Feige like kissing his fingers and letting go from like half court. Like we're bringing on Bova.
I still think it's hilarious. Like this is one of my favorite things about the Marvel movies. My wife can like verbatim quote everything that Arnim Zola says in The Winter Soldier. And she does not know the comics at all, and she thinks Arnim Zola is amazing. And I'm just like, we're living in a world where like regular people can like quote Arnim Zola in movies. And I'm like, Arnim Zola is like straight up fucking ridiculous.
It's just bizarre. I think we had a Twitter exchange recently about
Bova.
Bova and
Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver.
Scarlet Witch. It's just because they've retconned it since several times. I think at least twice. And man, I kind of wish they'd stick with Bova because that shit is just so bananas. Like I don't even know what it is.
I think Bova's still part of it. I just think Magneto's not their dad anymore for some reason. I just think it's funny that Marvel just deletes parents. They're just like, Fox has got the rights to them, so your dad is now, I don't know, this dude over here. Okay, so get back to Guardians. Let's start with what worked for you. What, besides like the family angle and also like some of the deep nerd stuff, what worked for you in the movie?
Baby Groot, I think, is like you almost have to ask yourself, should he ever grow up?
Did you like Teenage Groot?
Yeah, I did. I love Teenage Groot. I love teenage like video game addicted Groot who won't clean his room and is just like, Dad, get out of here. That said, Baby Groot is so cute that it's, and I actually did like, they kind of like wink at it in the movie. There's like this meta commentary where they're like, yeah, let's kill this guy. Let's kill this guy. What about this thing? Oh, he's way too adorable to kill. We can't kill Baby Groot.
Mm-hmm.
Baby Groot. I thought that David Bautista was fantastic as Drax, like in a surprising way. I liked Nebula, disconnected maybe from Gamora. Like if you disconnect her arc from Gamora, I just like the idea of like this totally driven by hatred, tortured person.
Yeah,
I think that's like one of the more interesting characters actually, like in the Marvel Cinematic Universe is Nebula.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the action was fine. The special effects were great.
Mm-hmm.
Like I saw it in 3D. I don't know if anybody else, but I would recommend seeing it in 3D.
Yeah.
But it's, maybe I'm not saying I'm burned out on these movies, but I'm just saying this was not one of the best ones.
No. Yeah, I think part of the problem was it was coming off of Guardians 1, which was, I mean, I think it's not a perfect movie by any means, but I think it's one of the most well-balanced movies they have in their entire line.
Yeah.
And it works so well just because, I like, the number one thing for me for these movies is the fact that I kind of just, like hanging out with these people. Like, that's it. That's what works.
That's the whole.
Yeah. And also, one thing I really appreciate is the fact that, like, the trailer kind of basically showed nothing. It showed, like, the first fight in the movie, and then it showed Groot dealing with, like, the button. And, like, that could have been anywhere, and, like, you wouldn't even known any better. So it was, I like going in kind of blind. I really liked the Watchers showing up. That was great. I want to ask, do you think that was the best Stan Lee cameo?
Yes.
Yeah.
because it actually made sense within like the universe. It wasn't just him walking through and this kind of like it began to feel almost like a chore after a while. Like I don't even know which movie at which point, sometime after Avengers, like where you're just like, oh, okay. We got it. Here he is. Hey, Stanley. Yay. But this time, at least, it was it made sense within the universe that he would be out there talking to the various Watchers
because he's been watching the whole time.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's hilarious that I had no idea there was a fan theory going that he was Watu for like forever, right. And they actually leaned into it and just made him like the Watcher's informant or whatever the hell he was credited as. And I don't know. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. It actually kind of contextualizes it all to make a lot more sense than it originally did. But I am still excited for they have that Watu card just hanging there. He's going to drop in Infinity War.
He's gotta. I mean, you kind of have to use all those people. I wonder if they're going to go full like wacko Starlin and do like who are the other ones, like Eternity and like Infinity, like just these crazy, like they don't even have like corporeal forms. They're just like concepts of like things.
Well, that is, that was another thing I liked. I liked the fact that they made Ego a Celestial, just because when I was growing up, did you ever see like those old Marvel Universe cards that they had that had like energy ratings, all that shit?
Yeah.
So I was always super hyped on the Celestials, even though I never read a comic with them, because all the meters went to 7 and they were so powerful it just said not applicable on them, and I was like, oh fuck, I want to read something with these guys. And the fact that they're actually doing them in movies is pretty amazing. That worked really well for me. I do think for what didn't work for me, I feel like Sylvester Stallone felt super out of place.
Yeah, I was like, why is he here?
Yeah.
Like he needs to do something else other than just be a guy that shows up and says a line that sounds like fucking a Sylvester Stallone line and then just leave. Like he has two, could you even call them full scenes? He has like a scene and a half.
Right.
And it just felt really tagged on. The same with the spoiler, David Hasselhoff kind of cameo. That at least was, the brevity of it was kind of the funny thing about it. But
yeah,
it's
and it
like,
kind of built organically at least.
It felt a little too winky to me. Yeah, I was not into Sylvester Stallone.
Well, the Sylvester Stallone thing, like that was one of the post-credit sequences. I actually I've been reading comics my entire life. I feel like I know Marvel pretty well. I didn't know who he was, and there was no obvious person he's supposed to be standing in for, and it apparently that crew at the end was basically the original Guardians of the Galaxy. Like Ving Rhames was playing Charlie 27, like this weird like military dude who's kind of like a square midget type or a little person type thing.
I didn't catch that at all.
I didn't either. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how we were supposed to associate with it, but it was really weird. And like Michelle Yeoh was playing Sylvester Stallone's sister, who was like the other, like he was playing, Sylvester Stallone was apparently playing Starhawk, and I'm just
that doesn't make any sense. I know I read that also, and that's like that was
too deep of a reach. That was too deep.
Yeah.
One other problem I had was I feel like they really shortchanged Gamora in it.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue that they did that last time. That's why I was saying like disconnected from Nebula's storyline. It's like the amount it's like they were trying to solve like basically their entire like backstory in 2 conversations. Like you either really need to delve deeper into that storyline and give that a lot more meat, or just keep it top level and just have them hate each other and not have this, because it felt like super rushed to all of a sudden like have Nebula say, I just wanted you to be my sister. Like all of a sudden, like after she's been hating her for all this time, you have to do much more work than that. I felt, and so
Yeah, I mean, I actually really like in some of Nebula's backstory and all this stuff about every time she lost in a fight, a part of her was replaced as like, I don't know, robot or whatever by Thanos. And I was like, that is fucked up. You actually have a legit reason to hate Gamora. And like, she kind of bails on it pretty fast. But that one other thing I thought was a little bit off, especially compared to the first one, is I feel like the Marvel movies that do that balance that I was talking about, where it's like, I feel like Guardians 2 was too always on like the high spectrum of like energy and didn't have enough quiet moments. Like the first one had a pretty good balance, and like other ones that I really love, like Winter Soldier. Winter Soldier has like really awesome high points, but also has like more kind of low key character moments built up throughout. But I kind of felt like the character or the quiet character moments were like more few and far between in the second Guardians.
Yeah, it's tough. Like the jokey tone, and I'm a big fan of the Marvel tone. I think that's their brand, and they should stick with it. But it just felt like a little over modulated towards the just kind of like slapstick this time.
Yeah.
And I think that, and it damaged that, like Chris Pratt welling up talking about his dad. Like that's not in Chris Pratt's fucking wheelhouse. You know what I mean? Like know who you're writing for. You know what I mean? Like that's not, nobody wants to see that. Nobody wants to see Chris Pratt getting all up in his feelings.
I have to admit, I kind of would prefer seeing that than Rocket Raccoon cry. That was kind of, I mean, if it was Groot, if the Groot part, I like in the first one when he was sad about Groot, I was like, all right, I feel that. But like him getting all misty eyed at like a Ravager funeral, I was just like, oh, come on, guys, come on. And
also like, it's Yondu is the guy that reaches him.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like,
you are me, Raccoon. You are me. And it just felt like that whole plot line just felt really like, okay, listen, someone's got to die this time. Yeah.
But the merchandising money tied up in Rocket Raccoon and Groot is like way too much. Yeah. We'll catch shit if we kill Gamora, so like, and it can't be Star-Lord.
Right.
So we got to write Yondu as a hero and we got to bring him back and then we got to kill him. Yeah. It just felt like that. So yeah, like the seams. I would say the seams show in kind of like the Marvel formula more than most Marvel movies in this one. Like you can almost see it. It's like, okay, cold open that establishes they are heroes now. Mm-hmm. And now we have like the down moment where we kind of hit the emotional contexts. Mm-hmm. And then we build simultaneous character arcs where the main thing that they're working on, which is the idea of family, gets kind of worked out by the end somehow, and something happens, and then there's a big fight, and we resolve everything. And you could kind of just see how you could taste the ingredients, I feel like.
I think so. I totally agree with that. So post Guardians 2, what's on your Mount Rushmore of comic book movies these days?
That's not announced?
Oh, what do you mean that's not announced?
Like a thing that is theoretically not on the slate?
No. What is like your from all the movies that have come out? What are your top 4?
Oh, okay. So my top 4. Let's see. I would say Winter Soldier number 1.
Yes.
Then I would say Avengers 1. Mm-hmm. Just because I didn't think that they'd be able to do it. Yeah. And they did it. Like that was a triumph. That movie is a triumph.
I think that's the one that kind of unlocked everything else. That was like the one where they're like, all right, we can do this. Let's roll out, Guardians of the Galaxy. Let's start developing Black Panther and Captain Marvel and all this stuff. It was like the heat check. Then as soon as it panned out, they're like, we're going to continue shooting from half court.
Yes, 100%. And then probably either Iron Man or Ant-Man.
It doesn't have to be Marvel. It can be anything.
Oh, anything? Okay,
yeah.
So Winter Soldier, Avengers, Dark Knight. Is it Dark Knight Rises or which is the one?
Bane is Dark Knight Rises. Dark Knight is Joker.
Dark Knight. Mm-hmm. Then Batman, the first Nolan Batman.
Mm-hmm. Batman Begins.
Batman Begins. And then I would go Captain America.
The first one?
First one.
Yeah, mine's Winter Soldier, Dark Knight, Guardians, and then First Avenger. I love that one. It's so good at establishing like that character. And I don't know. I mean, I feel like you kind of needed somebody who was kind of more purely heroic, especially after all of the. I'm not a crazy big Iron Man fan, to be honest.
Right.
And like you need kind of like a balancing agent for Tony Stark because he's kind of obnoxious at times.
The funny thing is, and this is kind of this is kind of what makes what Marvel has done amazing. Could you really say that anyone was like a big Iron Man fan? Like I didn't, no. I knew a lot of comic book people. Like there was no one I knew that was like, oh, Iron Man, that's my guy.
Yeah. The amazing thing is Spider-Man Homecoming is coming out, and they're jamming Tony Stark in there because they want to make sure it's a hit. I'm like, you have to put Iron Man into a movie to make Spider-Man a hit? What happened? This is crazy.
Well, I mean, to be fair, Robert Downey Jr.'s like charisma is the reason that these.
Yes, 100%.
Like, he unlocked the whole. Like he's the X factor in the whole thing.
Yeah, I actually think Robert Downey Jr. is 100%. Like besides maybe Feige, is like the MCU's MVP because if you didn't have him, it would have all fallen apart.
It would all fall apart. He's got it, that whatever that is that he has, he's got it, the charm factor.
I can't even imagine who else you would have cast as like Tony Stark. Robert Downey Jr. I mean, they were like one for one. They're like the same person in my mind, basically.
It's really, and the funny thing is, like, they've since kind of rewritten Stark to be more like Robert Downey Jr.
It's like autobiographical at this point.
Yeah, really.
He's like, wait a second. So I have to drink and hit on ladies?
Yeah.
I have a lot of practice at this. This is perfect.
Yeah. When they retconned like young Tony Stark, it's like, oh, it's Robert Downey Jr. It's remarkable.
It is really amazing. All right, so for what next? I want to ask about like the other ones that are coming out in 2017, because there's like a million comic book movies in the next few years, but there are 4 big ones that are coming out through the remainder of the year. And I want to ask, on a 1 to 10 scale, how excited you are for them, with 1 being probably won't ever see it, and 10 being seen it as early as humanly possible. Let's start with.
Well, here's the thing. Okay, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, let's start with Wonder Woman. What
Sure.
do you
Wonder Woman,
what do you rate it, and what are your thoughts on what we've seen so far?
I rate it. I really want to see it, so I'd put it as like an 8.
Sure.
I would say, in terms of importance, I think for the genre, it's like a 10. Like, I don't think you can really underrate like how important it is, and I think that's why it's like semi-alarming that they essentially did not start promoting the movie until like it feels like very recently, and like you go on their Warner's website, there's like a million Justice League things and like 2 like Wonder Woman things. But I'm excited. I really want to see that, and I think that I'm a Chris Pine person as well as a Gal Gadot person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm pretty hyped for it too. The only thing, it's funny, like the trailers really work for me until we get to the Wonder Woman theme, like the.
Yeah. I almost feel like that's Zack Snyder himself playing that, like on an electric guitar. It's like, guys, I came up with this last night. And he invites everyone to his room. He's like got his shirt off. He's all oiled up, and he like plugs in his Les Paul. He's like, guys, this is the Wonder Woman theme. Ready?
I feel like Hans Zimmer already had something, and Zach's like, he walks in and he's like, guys, I have something to lay over this that will complement it so perfectly, and everyone's going to be hyped about it. And I'm like, no, Zach. It does really seem like a Zack Snyder touch. And it did come out of Batman vs. Superman, so it probably is him actually oiled up doing that.
Yeah.
But I agree. It is really important because you know what happens. Like, if it flops, like the studios are probably going to be like, oh, women superheroes, they don't work. And
they'll lie. The thing is, they'll say that that's not the lesson that they've learned from this, but will essentially be the lesson that they will learn from this.
Well, look at the rated R movies. I know we're going to talk about that later, but I mean, like the takeaway is like people are like writing like, when are we going to get the first Marvel rated R movie? Like, why aren't more of them? Logan and Deadpool were huge hits, and I'm just like I'm glad that Kevin Feige came out and was just like, no, like those movies are great, but that's not us.
I also think there's extenuating circumstances. We'll get more into this with the rated R movie, but I think that those are 2 particular circumstances that don't translate to the wider genre in every not in every case, certainly not every case.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean Logan. I mean, it was about time that they made it really violent.
You have to.
Yeah, I mean
he's got knives in his hands. Like his whole thing is he stabs people. It's at some point it just is. To watch him kind of like pop his claws into a guy, but you don't see anything, and there's no blood, and the guy just kind of
it's
dies.
Like a bloodless affair.
Yeah, come on. Like, just use your powers of reasoning. Someone's arm is going to fly off. Like that's just what the character is. So yeah, it was time.
Up next, Spider-Man: Homecoming.
God, I mean, like I really like that they went with the high school thing. I would say like I would put it at a 6. I will see it. I'll probably see it within on the weekend that it comes out. Mm-hmm. I think Tom Holland seems extremely charming, and he has like certainly. He was he really captured my attention in his like the kind of cameos that he had in Civil War. I think it looks like a great Spider-Man. I'm just not sure. I need to see it.
I was really into it until they got to the story trailer, and then they kind of showed the whole movie, or what seems to be like the whole movie, and it kind of threw me off. But the thing that I really like about it is the fact that, like you said, he seems like a teenager. Say what you will about Tobey Maguire. I'm actually rewatching all the movies right now, and like Tobey Maguire just seems like a dude who's playing a teenager. And Tom Holland, like, I don't know if this stuff was intentional or if it's just like he really enjoys hanging out with Zendaya or whatever her name is.
Right.
Like them posting videos of them dancing together and everything.
It's great.
Yeah, it makes me feel like I'm just going to be hanging out with some kids, including Spider-Man. And like that feels right.
Yeah. There's like a weird conceptual crossover between like his character and the perception of Peter Parker. Yeah, because like his Instagram presence is like he's doing backflips and dancing and like you're like, oh, this feels like what a Peter Parker character would be like, and this is the real guy, so that's helpful.
Yeah.
As for the movie, we'll see. Yeah.
All right, Thor Ragnarok.
I never thought I would say this in my life, but I'm like at 8 to 9 for Thor Ragnarok. I maybe it's just the like the Immigrant Song trailer like is so perfect. Yeah, I also love, like the Walter, that era of Thor is fantastic to me, like Executioner and Gila and that whole thing. I love it. I think the Executioner's death like is one of the great comic book deaths ever given to a character. Like just the way he went out with 2 M16s fighting against like the legions of hell to hold a bridge. It's like it's so good.
Even better, magic M16s.
Yes. Like this is what that to me is like, okay, that's comic books.
Yeah.
What? Like he's standing at the bridge to hell holding off demons to save Asgard and the 9 worlds with magic M6. It's just so good. So yeah, like I'm like a 9. I can't believe it. Like I can't believe I'm this excited for that movie, but I really am excited for it.
That was the best comic book movie trailer yet. Yeah. Flat out. It was amazing. I actually, my wife asked who Cruella Urban was in it, and I was like, should I explain this? I'm like, I'm not, I like, just in case they do that, I don't want to explain it just because it would be, I imagine that in a movie. Like, it would be amazing. But
I just, listen, I'm really excited for that. Yeah, like I can't, like, I'm really excited. Like, I can't believe that they're actually going to do this storyline.
Yeah.
And roll it into Planet Hulk and some, like, that's amazing to me.
One of the most underrated things about Marvel is what they convince people to do. Like, the one that stood out the most to me was Glenn Close just playing a random, like, Xandarian Nova Prime person. But like, then you have Kate Blanchett as, like, fucking Gila? I mean, that is amazing.
And not only, like, as Gila, but really looking like she's, like...
Straight out of the comic book?
She went hard. Yeah, she went for it.
Yeah, big time.
She really went for it. It's not like Sir Anthony Hopkins who no shots at my dude, but he really felt like he was like sleeping through every Thor movie up until now.
To be fair, for part of it, he literally was. He was in the Odin sleep.
He was asleep, but he like he just was like, "What do I have to do? Okay, come out, say this stuff. Okay," and then
yeah.
I'm excited. Like if they can figure out a way to do a Beta Ray Bill in there.
Oh my god. Oh, people are, imagine the clapping for that if people are getting hyped about Adam Warlock.
Oh my god. Just imagine it's some kind of teaser trailer with like a horse finding a hammer like on a moon.
It'd be so amazing. Yeah. Oh my god. All right, the big one, Justice League.
Well, I mean, I'm gonna see it. I'll probably see it just because of like, I'll see it the first day.
Have to.
I have to. It's like you have to at this point. And it is with a sense of both intense interest and trepidation that I announce my score of 9.
Yeah.
And it's not a fully, I'm psyched 9. It's this is it.
Mm-hmm.
Snyder can't brick this one.
Right.
Or what?
I don't know. I mean, like, do you get to a reset? I mean, is that the reason why we're not getting any momentum on the Batman movies? Because they're like, well, let's wait and see how this works out.
Right. I mean, like, if he bricks this, and I think we'd also have to point out that these movies still make a lot of money.
Oh yeah.
Dawn of Justice made money.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's a level of critical, like, lashing that, that the studio would be willing to. There's only so much that the studio would be willing to take because it's like really acrimonious at this point. So I hope it comes out well. I don't have super high hopes judging from the trailer, but we'll see.
Yeah, I'm there with you. I'm excited about it just because it's Justice League, and it's crazy that we're at that point.
Right.
I feel like just because they've kind of hit the fast forward button and they didn't really. I hate to be that guy, but Avengers. I feel like they earned the Avengers.
Right. They laid a groundwork for it.
Right.
And they did it the hard way.
Yeah, and like Justice League, I feel like we went from like, I don't know, we just rushed through the whole thing, and the trailer's not super inspiring, but it's. I'm still a person who I feel like, and I almost base this entirely around Dawn of the Dead. I feel like Zack Snyder can make a good movie, and I think he makes very interesting looking movies.
Yeah,
despite the color palette, but I just he just can't get the characters right. Like they're not human, and that's, I guess that's one of the fundamental differences between DC and Marvel, right? Is DC's characters were iconic gods, and Marvel's characters were relatable, normal people to a certain degree. And I don't know, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out, but I mean, like you said, what happens if this doesn't work? Do they do a Flash movie? Do they do a Cyborg movie? Probably not.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like a lot is riding on this movie.
Yeah,
a lot, just so much is like almost like their entire upcoming slate is this is the tent pole. This is the tent pole for their strategy for the next 3 years. So it'll be interesting to see if it's good.
Yeah. I mean, it is going to be very interesting. I'm going to go there. Like when I went to Batman vs Superman, I didn't even really want to go, but I went like first night just because if you're not going to enjoy it when you're sitting there with like an entire crowd of comic book fans,
yeah, and you're not going to like it.
Yeah,
right.
you're not going to like it. So I went there and I was like fully ready to like give in to like the hype, and it was like a crypt. Like no one was moving, no one was hyped, no one clapped.
Yeah, it starts really promisingly.
Yeah.
Like the first, I would say it's 8 to 10 minutes of it, like with Bruce Wayne racing through the streets and this kind of street's eye view of the battle at the end of Superman. I was like, okay,
yeah,
hold on, this could be pretty good. And then it was a weird, the tonal center of the Snyder take on these movies, it just feels not heroic enough, or heroic in the wrong kind of way. Like heroism based purely on the ability to blow up like huge amount of buildings and beat up 50 guys. And I think what Marvel has done well is they've disconnected the heroism of their characters from their particular power set.
Mm-hmm.
Like Captain America is not a hero because he got the super soldier serum. He's a hero because he's the person that he is. And Tony Stark, the things he has gone through allows him to temper the immense power of his suit, et cetera, et cetera. You go on like on down the line. And I don't think he's really done. I don't think, Warner's / DC has not fully done that. But I hope they get better at it. I mean, I have high hopes for Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman looks like the movie that actually does that, actually, from the trailer.
Yeah, and I like the fact that they're actually doing kind of like the first Avengers style, like strip down, reintroduce the character, make her a person, like contextualize her through like Themyscira before they get into all the fighting of like Darkseid or whatever. Right,
100%. Like, yeah, because that shows you who she is. She's more than just like how is she like the 5th strongest like major hero in DC?
Probably something like that. Yeah,
something like she's more than just that. And that's why I think Wonder Woman looks really interesting. I hope. And the thing about Justice League is, do they have time to do that with Flash? Do they have time to do that with with Cyborg? It's just going to be that's the advantage of the Marvel structure to it, where you have the standalone movies first, even if they fail, like Hulk. Now you've got a ground, you've got a base level to build up from. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you see the GIF or whatever that was going around of Zack Snyder showing Michael Shannon and Henry Cavill how to snap a neck? It was amazing. Apparently it was from some making of thing, and Zack Snyder was showing him like at the end of Man of Steel, he was so like 12 out of 10 jacked about showing it, and it's like,
oh yeah, I'm looking at it now.
I feel like that is like a metaphor for all of the movies, like him showing it like, Superman, here's how you break a neck.
No, man, you gotta get in there. You wanna snap this guy's neck? You wanna fucking snap this fucking Kryptonian's neck? You gotta fucking wrench it, man. It's like, do you?
As he's wailing on a guitar well oiled up.
Zach has there's an interview in, I think it's a Hollywood Reporter from several years ago, like before he really took over with the DC movies, where he's talking about what his favorite things about DC are, and like one of his quotes is like, the way I would do Batman is like, would Bruce Wayne get raped in prison?
What?
Yeah, I think my Bruce Wayne would. Yeah, I mean, you can search this. It's fucking crazy, and I think that is the shit that explains Zack Snyder. It's like, would Bruce Wayne in my world get raped in prison? Yeah, he might. That could happen. It's like, holy shit. And he also like takes some shots at like, let's Captain America and Thor. These are kind of like the B-level heroes. I wish them all the luck. But it's pretty hilarious. You should look it up.
I will. So, we've talked about a lot of movies, and based off of my count, there are still 22 Marvel or DC movies coming out between now and 2020, if they all happen. Yeah. That's a lot. That doesn't even count the TV shows. Do you feel like you're feeling fatigued yet? I mean, you're still super hyped, but do you feel like you're getting there?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Like, I think at some point you've got to figure out, they got to tweak the formula somehow. And I think they're doing that with, by being like, okay, we got it. We have to like diversify our core lineup of heroes. So they're doing that with Black Panther, with Captain Marvel, with Wonder Woman. But at the same time, like, they've got to figure out a way. I think Doctor Strange showed this, where you almost felt like the studio was like, man, how do we do an origin story in under 15 minutes? Like,
Speed
and so, right, how do we do that? So I kind of feel like at some point these movies have to feel less formulaic. Ant-Man was like a breath of fresh air to me because of that, because it felt like it felt like a non-formula Marvel movie.
It was kind of like Dark Knight, in the sense that Dark Knight didn't feel like a superhero movie; it felt like a crime movie. And yes. Ant-Man felt like a buddy heist movie. And I think it worked for it.
Yeah. By the way, that Zack Snyder interview, it was in Entertainment Weekly.
Oh, perfect publication for prison rape conversation.
I mean, it's fucking wild. It's a wild conversation.
I think the R rating stuff, though, like that ties back into that.
Yes.
I think that kind of adjusted the formula, because Deadpool felt different. Logan felt different. I mean, Logan, it wasn't a Western, but it kind of felt like a Western in a way, like just in the vibe. It changed up the formula from what we've seen. Do you think that there's merit in like the rated R part, the R rating being an important part going forward? Or do you think being rated R was a big factor just because it was Deadpool and Logan, and like they kind of needed it?
I mean, that's what it is. I think it's particular to the kind of comic book content that those two characters are based off of.
Right.
That's their brand, is like extreme violence and funny violence. In the case of Deadpool, like Deadpool, some of his best moments are like when he gets a sword shoved through his head and he's like, "Oh, what's going on? What's this?"
Yeah.
He's like talking about it. Can you do that at PG-13? I think it's really tough, So, and then it's the same thing with Wolverine. It's funny because before that movie came out, I kind of went back through reading like a bunch of like the early Wolverine stuff through his introduction and into early X-Men, and just the evolution of that character from, he's kind of just like a Spider-Man guy who leaps around and tells jokes, and then it's like, actually, no, wait, he's like a secret agent, and there's something else to him, and then actually, wait, the claws are part of him. They're not in the gloves. They were, which it didn't, you weren't sure about that. And then just like the evolution of his healing factor, how fast it got, how his rages really came front and center. So, there's a lot of history of Wolverine just being this like really bugged out, tragic character, and I think you can't really do that in PG-13.
Right.
Like the tragedy of Logan, like the guilt that he carries from all the things that he's done, that's essential to the character, and that's been with the character since, Frank Miller.
Yeah.
That's an important building block of like who that character is, and I don't think you can address that in PG-13.
I think the thing that the movie tapped really well into was and I think Mark Miller wrote this really well in Old Man Logan itself, like the comic. is like Wolverine's destiny is to be by himself, basically. And
Right.
it's like his existence is lonely because everyone's going to die, and his healing factor will keep him around. So he'll see Jean Grey die, and he'll see Rogue die, and he'll see all these other people die, and he'll be the one that is left picking up the pieces. And yeah, no, I mean, I think it works for those. I mean, like, you can't just. I think I read somewhere that like Justice League might be rated R or something like that. I know
doesn't
it's
make sense to me.
well, and I know it's supposed to be like 3 hours, and like that just seems punishing. But
I know.
I like. I don't know why you would just do that. It wasn't successful because it was rated R. I hope that's not the takeaway they have from these movies. It was successful because they made the right decision for the right characters. And like, if you did, I'm trying to think of like I could see a rated R Batman movie just because he gets so dark and he's got all the, violence on the streets and stuff like that. But I don't think it would be because it was like an overtly violent movie. I think it was just because it fit. And I don't know. I could see DC running with that. I'm glad that Feige came out and was basically like, it's he said it was like the risk they took. That was the important part, the chances they took and the creative boundaries that they pushed. I think that's where they have to look at. But I hope it's not a trend going forward because it's not what destroys the formula. Like, coming up with something different did.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. But my one critique of that would be, while I agree none of the Avengers movies should ever, and related Avengers characters should ever be rated R, I think if you were going to go for a darker tone, it would have to be X-Men, just because it's like a tragic story.
Oh yeah. Well, Dark Phoenix saga.
Violence. Yeah, Dark Phoenix. Also, it's like the government is constantly trying to kill them. Yeah. There have been numerous genocides against their people. Like, so you have to figure out a way. Like X-23 kind of... I don't know how you do it with like a child actor, but her story is a rated R story because it's like child abuse and experimentation on children by shadowy doctors and government agencies, and also she's like extremely violent. So that would be like that's a rated R movie if you decided to do it.
I could totally see X-Men going that direction. I kind of feel like Days of Future Past could have been. I feel like X-Men's in like a weird place anyways because I feel like they kind of peaked when they came back with First Class, which I think is actually really good. Days of Future Past I like quite a bit, and then Apocalypse was kind of train wrecky, a little bit train wrecky. I mean, it had merits, mostly Michael Fassbender when he wasn't super bored with being a like acolyte or like a horseman of the apocalypse. But it's just, I don't know. I feel like they've kind of come around and come back to being so comic booky like the original X-Men movie that they need to kind of, I don't know, refocus. And I don't know if they'll do that.
The thing that I find really interesting about the X-Men movies is how totally by accident they have mirrored the absolutely insane X-Men comic book continuity. Like, and they did it because like, the first X-Men movies peaked too soon, like before the craze, really, before comic book movies really become a thing. And so to keep it rolling, they did like a whole recast but kept Wolverine. So it's like these multiple timelines are existing, and they didn't even mean to do that, but that's exactly what X-Men comic books are like in the comics. Because it's like, you've got the young original, like young Jean Grey and young Cyclops are in this world. Why are they here? I don't want to explain this to you, but like they just take it as an article of faith that they're here for some reason. And it's like all this other shit that, the mutants have died out 15 times in the last 20 years. So yeah, it's really weird. I mean, if it was me, what I would do is like, I'd hit stop, and I would just retcon the whole thing back based on the Ultimate X-Men. And just like, start fresh.
It is funny that they somehow actually fell into the same trap that the comics did, and it got so convoluted continuity wise. Like, it's nonsense, but I don't know. I if anyone's going to do that, it's going to be the X-Men.
Yeah, yeah. Like I love in X-Men Apocalypse when Charles loses his hair, and it's meant to be this moment like, oh shit, Charles Xavier is bald now, and he is Patrick Stewart. Holy shit! And it's just like whatever. I do not fucking care.
Well, I'm going to give you a next level for that, whatever, because I only have a few more questions. I wanted to ask about something that's near and dear to our hearts. Inhumans is coming. It's launching on IMAX. They're so hyped on it that the TV show is going to be launched on IMAX first. They dropped the first teaser image and trailer. Have you already started planning your calendar around Inhumans?
Listen, as I've said before on this very program, nobody fucking cares about the Inhumans. I know that there's going to be like a few Inhuman stands right now. They're going to come at me. Nobody fucking cares about the Inhumans. Black Bolt is fine. Karnak is good. What else do they do? They're just kind of there on the moon, and people, they're trying to make them into mutants, but it seems like nobody is very happy with this, even the people that are doing it.
Yeah.
It's like, that's the funny thing about the whole Inhumans are mutants now. There doesn't seem to be a lot of, like, even the creators don't seem particularly energetic about doing this.
Yeah, it's like they're doing it because they were told to do it or something.
Right. No one's like, oh man, Inhumans versus mutants. You're not going to believe what happens next. This will shape. It's not like that. People are just like, yeah, Inhumans versus mutants, man. This is our financial obligations as owners of IP require us to do this, and it doesn't feel very exciting to me. And I would extend that to the Inhumans television show, which looks weird.
Yeah.
The wigs look bad.
Really bad.
Really bad. Like, it looks
Medusa
like that.
looks so weird. She looks inhuman, literally.
It just looks, it looks like the original, like, Fantastic Four movie from, like, the 90s. Like, it looks bad. It looks fucking bad.
The one thing that, there's only been one Inhuman story I've ever really loved, and it was, like, the Paul Jenkins and Jay Lee story that they did, like, the 90s, like, the 12-issue maxi series. That's really good. I know that they're just not going to do that, though. It's all like building off of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and whatnot. The only thing that actually kind of makes me want to watch it is the fact that they cast Ramsey Bolton as Maximus.
That's very pointed. That is like perfect casting.
It is so good. It is like unbelievably good. But besides that, I don't care. It's almost like I like them less because they're being forced upon me.
Yes. Like, let's build... Can we build this with actual story and content rather than just being like it feeling like an absolute corporate move that is necessary because of who owns what?
Right.
It just doesn't feel great. Also, where's Lockjaw? Where's Lockjaw?
Yeah, seriously.
Where is he?
How did they cast? I mean, like, seriously, how did they convince anyone to play Black Bolt? He literally doesn't speak.
You will speak once a year. Like, the penultimate big battle episode of the season is when he'll speak twice. He'll speak in the first episode where they introduce them to show, like, his power one time doing something. And then he'll do it, he'll speak maybe a second time when he needs to charge some super weapon that Maximus has created.
Sure.
And then he'll speak again when he needs to defeat whatever villain it is that exists for season 1.
Yeah. I feel like it was a pretty quick script read for the guy that they hired. He's just like, here's 3 pages. Here's what you got. They're like, what? It's got to be more than this.
You stand there and say no, and that's it.
I feel like they sold him on the fact that, like, basically whenever he speaks, it will be like the coolest moment in the show. Because I'm not a huge fan of Silent War, but that one moment where he just whispers war was so badass that, like, I never forget it. And I don't know. It'll be... I would say it would be really interesting. I'm kind of fascinated. I have like a curiosity in the same degree that I have for Justice League, just because I don't know how it's going to work. It probably won't work. That's the answer.
Yeah, I'm not optimistic just based on what I've seen, but
yeah. So the last question I have for you before we get into 5 questions not related to comic book movies is, you host Achievement Oriented, a video game podcast. Yeah. Comic book adaptations, by and large, are very entertaining, especially when done by Marvel. Video game adaptations are notoriously terrible. Why do you think that is?
I think there's several reasons. Some of them are kind of structural, like the interactivity of video games makes their stories, magnifies kind of the bare bones of a video game story arc in ways that you can't really translate to the screen. It's like if I'm playing Assassin's Creed and I'm leaping across the rooftops and I make a really spectacular kill that is thrilling in a way that I don't know it could be translated to the screen in any way that makes sense. And I think the other thing is, the video game companies are super, super, super controlling of their IP, as you would expect. I mean, this is their bread and butter. So, and I think that the requirements of a screen adaptation require the IP to be translated in a way that maybe sometimes the overarching company is not going to enjoy.
Right.
So I think that holds it back, and in a way that's in a very real way, video games are just much more expansive as experiences than movies. How could you ever boil Warcraft, the experience of Warcraft, the game, which is really about bonding with strangers and missions and but not so much about the missions, but like the feeling of teamwork with other people,
right?
The feeling of accomplishing something. How do you make that into a movie that's just like about the lore, which is really silly anyway? Like the lore of Warcraft is not why people play that fucking game,
right?
So I think there's a disconnect there, and I think it's really hard to bridge that gap.
Yeah, and I think to a certain degree, it's like the games that I love the most. Some of my favorite games, like Final Fantasy, like just the whole Final Fantasy series for the most part, especially like when it was on Super Nintendo and PlayStation. And then I really like Knights of the Old Republic. That's one of my all-time favorite games. Those narratives work best in video game form, partially because they can be super long and they can work in ways that video or the movies just can't.
Yeah.
You couldn't tell Final Fantasy VI's story in a 2-hour movie. Like, I think I played that game for like 99 hours, and it was only because Square Enix didn't figure out how to code it so you could count more hours than that. And it's just like, I don't know, I guess it was just Squaresoft back then, but I don't know, it is kind of interesting. I saw some DC Comics editors recently talking about, like, they went out to lunch and they were talking about what is the best video game adaptation. And I think the poll that they ran ultimately landed on Silent Hill, which I actually agree with, which is still not a very good movie.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like I would argue that the Resident Evil movies are pretty interesting.
I agree. I try to tell my wife that all the time, but she won't go see the new one with me anyways.
But those also are not good. Assassin's Creed was bad, but not bad in a kind of any kind of egregious way. It was just a regular bad movie.
It was annoying how boring it was.
That's the thing. And it also, leaving aside the fact that you couldn't see any of the action because the color palette was just like bizarrely muddled. It was like really boring, which that's another thing about video games, right? You're constantly fed action in a way that is, it would feel absolutely absurd in a quote unquote normal narrative structure. Like in Assassin's Creed, if you go 5 minutes without having to fight 12 guards,
right?
And kill them, that would be a really boring game,
right?
In a movie form, if you tried to do that in a movie, people would like be reeling out of their seats with their eyes bleeding. You can't do that in a you can't make an Uncharted movie where Nathan Drake kills 500 fucking people.
Right.
So yeah, it's just hard. It's hard.
My wife was playing Assassin's Creed 2 recently because she randomly got into Assassin's Creed games, and like if you killed as many people as that Ezio dude kills, there would be like no one left in Italy.
There'd be no one. There'd be no one.
I do like, so Ben Lindbergh, your co-host, wrote a pretty good piece on the upcoming Castlevania animated series on Netflix. Yeah. I do think that's pretty promising, and not just because Warren Ellis is co-writing it. I love Warren Ellis, and I think that has a lot of promise just because I feel like Castlevania could work. But
I fucking loved Castlevania, man.
It was great. Yeah, Symphony of the Night.
Hey, let's get it. I want to play that now.
All right, so we're going to finish with 5 questions that are related to not comic book movies. I want to start with video games. Overwatch was one of your 10 favorite games of 2016, but anyone who's played it on competitive especially knows that it can be an insanely frustrating experience that is entirely based around what your team does. Like whether or not they just aren't idiots and keep off the point or stay on the point. As a video game veteran and expert, I have to ask, what's the most infuriating game you've ever loved?
Ever?
Ever.
Wow. It might be Overwatch, really. Like,
Yeah.
I know that's like recency bias, but I would say, and this is going to sound ridiculous to anyone who hasn't played this game, but the ratio of bad feelings to good feelings that this game creates, like within my body, is probably like 8-2. Like 80% of the time I play Overwatch, I'm hating life. I'm hating this game. I'm hating my teammates. I'm like trying not to say toxic things over chat. And then 20% of the time, when everything comes together and your team is communicating, everybody made the right picks, and people that needed to switch, including yourself, switched without having to be pushed to do it, and without it that process creating bad feelings, and you won probably. That is like, it's fucking crack. I had a 7-6 win in comp on Numbani once.
Oh, wow.
7-6. So like double overtime.
To the max.
It was to the max. They went first. They pushed the payload first and scored so fast that we were like, oh fuck, we're doomed.
That's like
and
a
then we
Rockets Warriors game. Just pure pace.
Yeah. And then we went in and just absolutely jammed it down their throats, and it just went back and forth like that. That's probably the closest I'll ever feel to being in a NBA playoff game. Like, my hands were fucking shaking. I had sweat pouring down my face. I had to just be like, I can't play anymore. I have to get off because my heart is pounding. That is the stuff. That just doesn't happen every game.
Yeah.
It's not. It makes you into a bad person, that game.
I actually sadly just recently reached platinum for the first time, and in my last game, because what would happen is I'd always get right to the precipice of platinum, and then I would get like 10 rounds straight of just like straight drunk teammates, and like I would
what
never
are you doing?
I know, exactly. So I got to like the last game, and I was like, we crushed it. We were playing. Oh my god, I can't believe I just spaced it. Not Ilios, the other map that is
the Egypt map?
No, not Temple of Anubis. The one that's like has the night market and the garden, and anyways, whatever. That one. It was like one of the ones you have to control the point. Anyways, and when we got to that, we won the first one, we won the second one, and then the third one, it was like I went completely anti-clutch. Like, my brain was just melting because I was like, if I don't do this, I'm never gonna get platinum. And it was ridiculous. I actually think Overwatch is the closest I've ever had to a video game experience that could be effectively described as like a bad relationship.
Yes.
It's amazing. It's like but the good times are so good, and you're like, the other times you're just like a cursing mess, and you're like, I'm gonna turn off voice chat because otherwise I'm gonna yell at people.
Not to wax too long about Overwatch, but I really have like so many thoughts about it all the time. One of the things that someone gave me some good advice about Overwatch in group chat, and this speaks to what kind of game this is, that pieces of advice that people give you in the fucking group chat stick with you. So this guy was like, the way I see it is there's always going to be one guy who is just a fucking idiot and won't listen.
Hanzo Man.
Hanzo Man something, and just refuses to switch. And then there's going to be a person who's just like literally fucking around and wants to ruin your experience.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so that's going to be two. And then the other person is going to be just new at the game or something, right, or trying out a hero for the first time, is trying to do as well as they can, but just is not good at that particular hero, whatever the case may be. So you have to really just deal with the three people that are on your level and that you can communicate with, and not worry about these other three. Or even if it's a Hanzo Man who's doing the stupidest shit ever, just figure out a way that you can, control what you can control and support that person, even though that person is an idiot. Right. That's great advice that really stuck with me, that I never follow. Yeah. I don't follow it. I get in the game, I'm just like, fuck you, what the fuck? We don't need are there two snipers? Why is there a Hanzo and a Widowmaker? What are you doing?
I've explained my feelings to my wife so much about that game, and I've actually told her that I think that it's an elaborate social experiment by Blizzard. That they're just, because I've told her, I was just like, what people pick says so much about them and whether or not they'll flex and everything like that.
Oh my god, it says so much. It says everything about them.
I've thought way too much about the game. It's ridiculous.
I think I say one more thing I'll say,
sure,
which is this is so that Jeff Kaplan, if you're listening to this, there should be a driver's license test for DPS. I think I've said this on your podcast before, but so you should have to like do 10 hours of whatever of a DPS hero before you get to play it in comp, because that's how people lose. So I'm McCree, man. I'm great McCree. Are you kidding me?
No one's a great McCree. No one.
No,
I hate McCree.
You're not.
He has like, I can't even play him. I just don't play him because I'm not good as him. God, it's killing me. So next question. Your boy Kristaps Porzingis' Twitter posted LA Clippers to his account. Supposedly he was hacked, and he said he never even uses the emoji that was used anyways. Are you buying or selling that he was hacked?
I'm selling that he is hacked. First of all, no one's like that's not what anybody who is hacked tweets through your thing. Like they'll
LA
tweet
Clippers.
with a emoji face. Second, I'm not sure how this works, but NBA players have more than one device.
Right.
Many of them do. Does your recent emojis show up on that tab if it's a different device?
I don't know.
I'm not. I think I'm going to say no. That's not the case. And then 3, just use a whole bunch of emojis until that emoji goes away, and then take a screenshot. You've had like a day. You know what I mean? Like you've had a day to do that. Just hand it to your assistant and go, okay, just punch in like whatever, how many emojis it takes until the smiley face emoji is off my recently used emojis tab, and then hand it back to me, and I'll take a screenshot of that, and that will be my excuse. Come on, it's not come on.
Does anybody believe that if somebody's hacked? I don't even know. I don't know if I believe anyone who says they were hacked. Maybe sometimes, I don't know. But
unless compromising pictures or like a weird or your account tweets like some spam link,
right?
Then I don't believe it. No.
Yeah.
That didn't happen.
I agree. So to spin off that, I read that George R.R. Martin is helping with one of the Game of Thrones spinoffs. The next question ties into 2 of your loves. One was the previous one we were talking about. The other one is naturally A Song of Ice and Fire. What happens first? The Winds of Winter is released, or the Knicks make the playoffs?
Wow. Winds of Winter.
Really?
I do think we get wins. I think we get wins by like spring of next spring. Let me go on the record as saying that.
All right. Well, yeah, I mean, with playoffs would mean June, or I guess April, May. So yeah, I could see that. It'll be interesting. It's actually like, that's tough. I was trying to figure it out. I feel like it'd probably be Winds of Winter, but I don't know. I don't know if we have any indication at all as to when it could come out. So it could come out in 6 months. We don't even know. So up next, the Celtics and Wizards are playing in the NBA playoffs right now, and it continues their ongoing beef the two have had. I don't even know where it came from. What's your take on the beef? Is it silly, or does it make the series better?
Well, I mean, it objectively makes the series better.
Right.
Of course it's silly because they're beefing about basketball and things that happen on the court. But it's like that series is so good because, listen, a lot of these games are blowouts and the winner is obvious. So like I want to see something like on every play. Like with Celtics Wizards, I just have no idea what's going to happen at any given moment. Like which one of these players that I would never expect to start swinging will start swinging, because like on every play in that series, something dirty is happening somewhere in the court. Like someone's grabbing somebody's arm, somebody's like elbowing, somebody pushing. Every drive to the rim, there's just bodies falling to the ground. It's fantastic. So yes, I am for it, and I think it's silly, but I am for it.
I'm calling it now. If Jason Smith goes on the court when Kelly Olynyk is there, he's on there to take him out.
Jason Smith, secret dirty player. I guess
so
people
dirty.
Would say the same. So dirty. I guess people would say the same as Olynyk. And my thing with Olynyk is, and I'm no Celtic lover, I just think he's just gangly and like not coordinated. I just think he's like you could chalk that up to recklessness in general. So yes, he's a reckless player, but I just think he's just not like he's a fucking oaf. You know what I mean? He's just like an oaf.
Yeah. Who is it? Jason Smith like straight up wiped somebody out like 5 or 6 years ago when they were running down the court, and he just like leaned into him and just railed on him. And it was, I mean, anybody who watches basketball knows Jason Smith is dirty. It's hard. It is funny that Kelly Olynyk is like there's a divide. Is he dirty or is he just a goofy oaf? It's hard to tell.
I think he's an oaf, and I think it was Blake Griffin, but he did it before that too.
Oh, you mean the armbar?
Yeah, no, the flagrant foul on it was Blake Griffin. He did it once to Blake Griffin. He did it once to somebody else before that, who's escaping my mind. Yeah.
So lastly, you were at the Tribeca Film Festival last weekend, and you were in the rare presence of the enigmatic creator of Metal Gear, Hideo Kojima.
Yes.
You and your achievement-oriented co-host, Ben Lindbergh, both took selfies with Kojima in the background, and it was hilarious. I loved it. I thought it was so great. You probably are past this these days, but what is the most starstruck you've ever been?
I think it might be like, it really is like Kojima.
Yeah.
I haven't talked to, I've been in rooms with people who are whatever famous. Maybe it's just like the New Yorker in me that you just don't notice because I've rode on the subway with, Steve Buscemi,
Sure.
where he's just like there.
Yeah.
So like that stuff happens, but like Kojima, he's like a Prince. He's like Prince.
Right.
He's the video game version of Prince because he's so reclusive. And it's like, we tried to get an interview with him when we were talking to like the various PR people that are involved with Tribeca, and we were like, okay, we talked to this person, this person, this person. And they're like, yes, you talked to that person, that person. And then when it came to Kojima, they were like, we have no contact for Kojima. Like they don't even know who to talk to about when he's going to show up. It was like they had nothing for him. I was like, well, how did you even get him to come there? Like, we don't know.
He just showed up.
He's just coming. Like he's going to drop down from the ceiling.
That's amazing. Yeah, my biggest one I ever had was, it was also probably the most embarrassing situation I've ever had. I met Scottie Pippen at a restaurant in Portland when I was in college. And it was after seeing them, the Blazers play the Pacers. And I went up and I introduced myself to him and I talked to him for a little bit. And I'd always heard that he was kind of a dick, to be honest. Like that's what I'd always read.
Right.
And I went up and he was like the most gracious person I've ever met in my entire life. And all I want to do is like get his autograph because I was a total nerd. And I was so locked in on just getting that autograph and getting the hell out of there that I didn't even notice that he because we were talking about basketball for a bit, he reached out his hand to shake my hand and pulled a chair out so I could sit down and talk basketball with him. And I just bailed.
Oh!
And the people I was with saw him do that. And they told me,
so good.
They were like, what did you do? And I'm like, what? And they're like, he pulled a chair out so he could sit down. And I was like, no, Scottie Pippen wanted me to talk to him and I just bailed. It was horrible.
That's like one of those awkward social interactions where almost like when you say, oh, you too, to a waiter after they're like, how is everything? It's just like one of those things that will stick with you forever.
Oh yeah, no, I 100% will always remember that. Most of my celebrity, I had an odd amount of celebrity interactions when I was younger. I met Axl Rose when I was 11 randomly. Just all these random things, and pretty much every story is fairly embarrassing. But I've gotten a lot better about it apparently. Anyways, that's all I have for you. Thank you so much for coming on, Jason. I really appreciate you taking the time.
No problem. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Off Panel with the Ringer's Jason Concepcion. You can find him on Twitter at @network, that's NETW3RK, on The Ringer at theringer.com/@JasonConcepcion, and on The Ringer's video game podcast, Achievement Oriented. If you're a fan of the show, there's some big news. Off Panel now has a Patreon. If you like the show and want to support it, consider backing it on Patreon at patreon.com/offpanel. There are fun rewards and insider information you can get if you do. Big thanks to all my existing patrons, including Kat McKenzie, Lou Iovino, Christopher Carter, Nicholas Kesslake, Brian Dickerson, Greg Rucka, Ryan Mail, Adam Highfill, Nicholas Gardner, Andrew Corrigan, Fiona Staples, Chris Morris, Johan Borander, Chris O'Halloran, Mark Abnett, Matt Battaglia, Alec Bernal, Mike Murphy, Michael Shirley, Tom Barnett, Jim DiMonacos, Norbert, Nick Lowe, James Kaplan, and Mission Comics and Art in San Francisco. You guys are the best. Don't forget to like the show on Facebook at /sketched, that's SKTCHD, follow it on Twitter at @sketchcomic, or follow me at @slicefriedgold. Want more from Off Panel? Subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher and give the show a rating or review while you're at it. A quick thanks to the band Wolfpack, whose excellent track Outro from their album Volmilch opens and closes the show now. Give them a listen as they're totally rad. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode.